And then from moving from there, we go into Forest Hills. And Forest Hills kind of brings to my mind something that we saw this week as far as neighborhood compositions. There were 3 new types of neighborhoods that we hadn't seen last week that I think are worth calling out. And the first one was in Forest Hills, which was a different type of affluence than what we referenced last week in Long Island City, which is these very beautiful, well, not always very beautiful, but really there weren't
Some of them were.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there were a ton of tacky ones like you might see in other parts of the city. Most of them are pretty well done, large, presumably quite expensive homes.
Yeah. Yeah, like standalone homes.
Yeah.
I don't know how big I don't know, like square footage wise.
Yeah. But they didn't.
They looked like the type of home that could have like 8 bedrooms
Right.
in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they didn't quite have the distance that you might see in other areas from each other.
Like in the suburbs or something.
Yeah, but they definitely
No.
felt like individual units. They didn't feel connected in any way.
No, they definitely weren't connected. They were definitely standalone, but you're right. They didn't have like huge property.
Yeah.
It was just that the house was really big and then there'd be a small yard.
Yeah. But there were some other instances of these houses. Forest Hills, I would say, is a little bit different and kind of, I think in a way, fits with how further west it is in relation to some of the other ones we've seen. But like Auburndale and out in Bayside, there's this type of neighborhood that is, I would consider it a blurring of Long Island and New York City, where it feels suburban, but it still retains enough of the city characteristics to make you aware that you're still in the city,
Right.
such as, bus access and the park, the nature of the parks, the signage associated with the parks, the fire pole boxes, just a bunch of
Yeah, the fact that there's sidewalks that
Yeah.
run the entire way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just little trappings here and there, which make it feel like the ability for people who want to still live in the city but want a bit of the suburban experience, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, more space, or I don't know if it has to do with the schools, or maybe even wanting to be able to get out to Long Island, or just have more space, have a yard, or
Have a car.
have an animal, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely feels like you're on your way out there. You're on your way out to the island.
Yeah. So then the second type of neighborhood, I would say, is one that we immediately hit after the Forest Hills section that we went through, which is in like Paumanok and around Kew Gardens. And there was a couple of other instances of this. And these are, I think, neighborhoods that I wasn't really as aware existed in Queens or in the city in general, but I feel much more confident to associate with other cities, and that's kind of the condo complex situation.
Yeah.
There was all these buildings that, they look very similar, they're very nicely maintained, and they have a fair amount of property, but they're all collectively owned property. There's no like individual yards or anything. You kind of have your own individual entrance to your own space.
Right.
But they're all like courtyards set up so that, they made for very nice spaces.
Yeah, they seemed really nice. But I think like an example of what you are saying about that is one day we walked by and there were 2 people sunbathing, and from the sidewalk you can see both of them and they can see each other, but they were on opposite sides of the courtyard. There's no like shrubbery to distinguish property lines or anything like that, but it's a very nice space. There's benches in the middle, and yeah, like you said, it all seems very nicely maintained. Feels something like a retirement community.
There were a lot of elderly people that we saw around. I don't know if it's
But
exclusively
Yeah, because I
retirement.
could also see it being like, I could see young families being there or anything like that too. It reminded me of when I've been in the suburbs and been to retirement communities, it has a similar vibe. Although, again, it's very much still in the city where you're not. I usually think of those as being like in a cul-de-sac where you're turning off the main road and you're going into a condo area. But this was more,
Just right out
we just
there.
happened upon it
Yeah,
and then we passed through it.
yeah. It was a type of development that I associate more with like a sprawly city, but I guess in some ways Queens is kind of the borough with the biggest opportunity to have sprawl. So yeah, so that was the second type. And then the third type might even be hard to really consider it a type necessarily, but it was interesting enough to worth mention. There are service roads that accommodate the various different major roads that go through Queens, and we walked on a couple of them. We walked on the service road for the Clearview Expressway, and we walked on it for one more, the Cross Island Parkway. And I was really surprised with the quality of the homes there. Like, they were very nice homes. And like lots of yard space and nice quality houses. And, my thought when I think about a service road for a bigger road is that it's not going to be, a quality area.
Yeah. You often think it's still going to be really loud. It's going to be out in the sun. It's going to be like kind of dirty from being near the highway. And actually on the first day, we were looking at the map as we were coming upon the first service road, right? And we were saying, well, maybe we'll turn and go down the road parallel to that.
Right.
But then we were getting closer and closer and we were like, is that it? It looks nice.
Yeah.
And it was somehow so the two I can think of, one had like a retaining wall, so it blocked the noises from the highway.
Yeah.
And then the other had a strip of trees, like 5 trees deep or
Right,
so.
right.
And that blocked the noise and also provided a lot of shade. And yeah, it was pretty peaceful
Yeah.
on those service roads.
So it was while we were on one of these service roads that we saw the church service that we referenced earlier in the podcast.
Yeah.
We just happened to see while we were on the road this church with many statues.
Yeah.
Outside.
Big statues, colorful statues.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about a block over. But
Yeah.
we just happened to look over and see it. It was hard to miss if we were looking to the left where it was.
Yeah.
And yeah, we went to check it out.
Yeah, so we were out in front of it just kind of looking, and then we were reading the plaque that was in front of it, and then a woman in a veil and a long dress came up to us and asked us what we were doing. And
She was very nice.
She was very nice, yeah. And
It wasn't like, what are you doing here? Get out kind of thing. It was more just like, hi.
Yeah. And she, we described what we were doing, and she told us that it was a traditional Catholic sanctuary. So they were doing the Catholic Mass in Latin while we were there.
Is that what it was? Did you look it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we couldn't go in.
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't go in. She's like, she was very, nice, but she said, you can't have shorts on. You have to wear pants.
Yeah, or a
And-
skirt.
yeah.
I would have had to wear a skirt.
Yeah, and Jessie would have had to wear a head covering of some kind.
She said I'd have to wear a veil.
Yeah.
And I must have looked like, and I was like, oh, okay. But I must have looked like I was wearing a baseball cap. She either just figured I didn't have a veil, or maybe my face was trying to figure out, like, what could I use? And then she said, but we have some you could borrow if you want
Yeah.
to come back. So yeah, they were really welcoming, which was nice. Do you remember what it was called?
Yeah, it was Our Lady of La Salette Church. Yeah. So we had actually.
We meant to go back. We wanted to go back today, actually.
Yeah, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
We took a slightly different route. So,
Yeah, maybe on a future route.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful outside, and it would be nice to see what it looks like inside.
Yeah.